The recent conviction of Carmelo Anthony in the murder of Austin Metcalf has the entire country talking about racism and the role it plays in our justice system. It seems like everyone on YouTube is offering their opinion on this case, so I'll go ahead and join the bandwagon. In case you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I'll go ahead and briefly get you up to speed. The story begins at a track meet in Frisco, Texas, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. Carmelo Anthony was in the opposite team's tent. Why exactly he was there is a bit uncertain. There are different versions of the story. Some say that he was seeking shelter due to inclement weather. Others say that he knew someone from the other school and was there to have a conversation with somebody, but for one reason or another, Carmelo Anthony was under this tent where he wasn't supposed to be. Carmelo was approached by Austin Metcalf, who asked him to leave the tent. Carmelo refused to leave the tent. Subsequently, an altercation breaks out between the two. Carmelo then brandishes a knife, allegedly saying, "Touch me and see what happens." Austin then pushes Carmelo. I'm not sure how hard or aggressively Carmelo was pushed by Austin. There's different versions of the story. But at this point, Carmelo lunges at Anthony with the knife. The knife sticks Anthony between the ribs, piercing his heart, ultimately causing him to bleed out and die. Carmelo then attempts to ditch the murder weapon and flee the scene. Carmelo is eventually apprehended by police, at which point he says, "There is no allegedly, I did it." Shortly after being arrested, Carmelo posts a $250,000 bond and is released. Carmelo's family starts a GoFundMe to help raise funds for his legal expenses, which they allegedly spent on a mansion, and that's basically the gist of the incident itself. Now, fast forward 1 year and the case goes to trial. Right from the onset, Carmelo's defense has quite the hill to climb. The prosecution has a pretty strong case. They have video footage of the incident. They have multiple witnesses who testified. They even have the confession that Carmelo gave to the police. Carmelo's whole defense strategy seems to be to throw whatever they can at the wall and see what sticks. It seems like the crux of Carmelo's defense was self-defense. He was trying to argue that since Austin pushed him, he had the right to defend himself. Unfortunately for Carmelo, that's not how self-defense works. In order to argue self-defense, there has to be some kind of reasonable expectation that your life is in jeopardy. A slight push or shove obviously doesn't meet that criteria. Now, I'll be the first to say that I don't necessarily agree with Austin's decision to get physical with Carmelo, just because it could have escalated the way that it did. I think it would have been better for Austin to go find an adult and let them know, hey, there's someone in our tent who's not supposed to be there, and let the adult handle it. But I still don't think that means that Austin deserved to get stabbed to death over a little push. The defense also tried arguing that Carmelo didn't actually stab Austin intentionally, rather that Carmelo simply brandished the knife, and that Austin impaled himself on Carmelo's knife. This, however, was contradicted by witness testimony. All of Carmelo's defenses were pretty flimsy, and needless to say, the jury didn't buy them. It took the jury a mere 3 hours of deliberation to ultimately convict Carmelo Anthony for Austin Metcalf's murder, subsequently handing down a 35-year sentence. Now, why 35 years specifically? Well, according to Supreme Court case law, it's actually considered unconstitutional to give someone under 18 the death penalty or life without parole. I personally think that criminal sentencing should be done differently. I think there should be less of an emphasis on retribution and more on rehabilitation and reintegration into the community, but that's a conversation for a different video. Now, Carmelo has made it clear since the conviction that he intends to file an appeal. Many people are criticizing the trial, saying that it wasn't completely fair for various reasons. For example, many people are criticizing the fact that there were no black people serving on the jury. While this may be true, there were still ethnic minorities such as Hispanics and Asians serving on the jury. And even if the jury was all white, how would that be relevant? The jury's job is simply to analyze the facts and make a decision. The skin color of the people involved doesn't change the facts of the case. Another thing that people are criticizing is the judge's decision to shut off all cameras in the courtroom. Now, as a judge, it's your job to make sure that the case goes on as fairly and efficiently as possible, which often means exercising some discretion, and in this case, I guess the judge felt that media bias would have unfairly impacted the case to such a degree that he had to shut off all cameras. So now I've laid out the basic facts of the case. There's a few opinions on this I'd like to share. The biggest thing in all of this I definitely want to criticize is the way the media is portraying this case. Specifically, the way they're trying to paint Carmelo as some kind of a victim and make this a race issue. People on the left are seriously trying to argue that Carmelo is being targeted because of his skin color. Carmelo isn't a victim. He murdered someone in cold blood because he had his ego bruised about being asked to leave a tent he wasn't supposed to be under. That's it. Trying to paint Carmelo as some kind of a victim or trying to make this a race or political issue does a huge disservice to the Metcalf family, which is another thing I'd like to discuss. The way the Metcalfs are being treated through all of this is just absolutely abysmal. The Metcalfs Metcalfs are apparently receiving death threats, and people are saying some fucked up shit, like his twin brother Hunter should have died too. Like, people seriously have nothing better to do with their time than to harass a bereaving family. I feel really bad for the Metcalfs, because in addition to having to deal with losing their son, they're also having their reputation dragged through the mud by the media, as if it's somehow their fault that some whack job decided to murder their son. The final thought I have on all this is that I think this whole situation is a symptom of a bigger problem, and that is people just don't want to take responsibility when they fuck up anymore. Because look, at the end of the day, we're all human, we all make mistakes, we all fuck up sometimes. What's important is, can you learn from and take responsibility for your mistakes? And Carmelo doesn't seem to want to do that. Carmelo just wants to blame Austin, or say it was self-defense, or cry racism. He hasn't done anything to take responsibility for what he did, or to show any remorse to the Metcalfs. If Carmelo does have any path to redemption in all of this, if there is any path for him to move forward and grow from this and maybe become a better person, then the very first step, the very first thing he needs to do is take responsibility. Just say, yeah, I killed him, I fucked up, it was my bad, and show some remorse to the Metcalfs. And 17 years from now, when he is eligible for parole, that's one of the things the judge should take into consideration when deciding whether or not to grant his parole, whether or not he has taken responsibility and shown some remorse. So hopefully Carmelo will take his time in prison to think about what he did, maybe learn from it, and maybe later down the road he comes out of it a better person. Who knows? So what do you guys think? Do you think the trial was fair? Do you have the same criticisms other people do? Do you have criticisms of the way the media is portraying this case? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Until next time, this has been Philosophy making stupidity play dead. Everyone take care.